Welcome to the Business Unscripted podcast. We're here to share real-life insights, practical strategies, and the honest lessons that we have learned from our own mistakes because, frankly, we have been in your shoes. So whether you need help with operations, accountability, financial knowledge, sales, or maybe just getting your mindset right, we are here, and this is the right spot for no-fluff conversations and tools that work. So grab your favorite cup of joe. Let's jump into the show. Welcome, everybody, to another Friday morning episode of the Business Unscripted podcast. And as my voiceover said, grab your favorite cup of joe and let's jump into the show. As always, we have a lot that we want to talk about, so we're just going to jump into it. And I hope you guys are having a wonderful and fantastic week. If you're a business owner, you're in the right spot. We're here. We talk about experiences that we've gone through, things that we're helping our clients go through right now, and sharing kind of those experiences so that either one, you don't have to feel alone if you're going through some of the stuff right now, and two, you don't have to do maybe some of the same mistakes that we did, and you can learn from what we have done in the past and made it work. So we're here. Duarne is my co-host, my business partner as well on a lot of endeavors. So welcome back. And as I said last week, it's always more enjoyable when I get to the office or I wake up in the morning and I don't have a message saying, hey, brother, I got a meeting. I can't make the podcast today or not feeling well. So I appreciate it. You're here again. Welcome, sir. How are you?
Love it. Thanks for that intro. I appreciate it. I feel very honored to be here again.
Love it. So I know there's a lot of, today I think is going to be very AI focused. I did an AI presentation yesterday. Duarne and I are doing a lot of different things. But I do want to make the caveat too that when we talk about automation, AI, they're not the same thing. And I think we briefly touched on this last week. And so many people, I think, have that assumption that when they hear automation, they automatically think AI. Or when they think AI, they think automation. Now, the difference is, right, Duarne, you guys have a white label of Go High Level. And Go High Level is a big, software platform that allows you to do everything from CRM, social media, landing pages, DocuSign type activities, payments, customer management, text messaging, you name it. It's pretty much in the CRM, right? Go High Level that you could possibly do. And they don't charge you arms and legs, users, all this stuff that some other people cost. I'm in it. I appreciate it, whether it's a white label or whatever. But there's automation in there that could be set up for your business to take a process that you're doing and just automate it, where you set the steps, right? You set the copy, however you want it to go. And I think this is where a lot of people overlook, and they think, well, if AI can't do it, then, I just have to do it. And in reality, if you're doing something manual repetitively, whether it's a proposal template or it's a email chain that goes out to new connections, anything like that, that can be set up just as easily with an automation as having, AI do a meeting summary on your notes and write a follow-up email. So keep that in mind as well, that they're not the same. They intertwine, but they're definitely not the same. Thoughts on that point?
Yeah, look, I definitely agree. We touched on this I think it was last week when we spoke. Automations and AI, whilst they seem similar, and it gets a little fuzzy for some people, the automations can just be very, very straightforward workflows, taking you from point A to point B to point C. You can introduce AI at any point to enhance and improve, but not to be confused with full AI automation. So when you jump in and you drop a PDF and you ask it, an AI like Claude or ChatGPT to go on and manipulate, analyze, and produce alternative documentation based on that, that's a straight AI solution. Where if you were to take that document and you wanted that shared to sent out for signing and then returned, and then when it gets returned, send it off to an automation automatically sends that off to the person who needs to co-sign it. And then once that's done and gets returned, gets picked up and put into a folder and then kicks off an order process. That's an automation. And you can see that second one has zero AI integration to it. That is literally just an automation, taking something from point A to point B and automating the process. And I do see a lot of people getting confused with what do I automate versus what do I AI? And it doesn't matter whether you're using the AI or the automation. Most processes require you now to actually do a little bit of both.
Yeah, for sure. And AI can help. Like if let's say you're struggling, maybe you don't even have a process or a system. Maybe you don't know what you should send out, right? After a new connection or somebody's reached out and done a contact me on your website. That's where AI can help on the front end with the design and maybe even like help you with the copy and the information about your business and making it educational. And then you can use that to build the automation, right? And the different steps. So, and even now potentially have have Claude or have your agent go into Go High Level and actually build out the automation for you. But make sure but make sure you're checking it. Make sure you're going in, you're reading the copy, you're making sure there's no misspelled placeholders so that it goes out with incorrect information or just hey, contact us at phone number. Like those are things that need to be reviewed by either yourself or a team that is doing it for you, so you can make sure that what is being communicated is legitimate and makes you look professional. And that's the whole idea, is take those manual things that you would typically go to an email and have to type up an email to 50 people or whatever that you met at a networking event, and now you can take it and just enter them into your CRM, and then that automatically kicks them off into that automation, and now they're going to get 12, 14 emails over the next 14 weeks or something like that from you. So those are great opportunities for you to get started. But that kind of leads me into like the first thing that I mentioned that I wanted to kind of bring up, and it's the idea, I was on the way in listening to this short clip about how AI, in terms of like the generative AI, is struggling right now, right? Obviously, these big companies are paying billions of dollars, and the output is set pennies on the dollar, and so when you think of generative AI, Duarne, versus process AI, what does that mean, or what do you think through when you're kind of like explaining the difference, or maybe you haven't explained it in that particular fashion yet?
Yeah, no, I haven't really explained it like that. It's interesting to place it in that sort of context. For me, generative is much more fun. But I think when we start talking about that, I'm assuming that's where you're referring to video creation, audio creation, the ability to generate images and documentation.
Right. Well, and I would think like a lot of it is like just complete end to end, right? So like it's thinking on the fly, it's your chatbot, like all that stuff that's supposed to be
integrating like proper agent use cases, etc. as well, agentic use cases.
Like your DM, and it's because a lot of people want, like, I want somebody to manage all my social media. I don't want to touch it, right? They're just like, I want it on autopilot. But I want it to be personalized. I want to do all this other stuff, like all that generative stuff that it has to do because you're not touching it, you're not approving it, you're not giving feedback on it. That's what I think of generative.
Okay, I get it. So you're thinking like the agentic stuff that we're talking about. No worries. Yeah, look, when you start thinking about that, that's the direction I think everyone who's wanting to really get a lot out of the platforms is going. For me, if you're still just in the chat functionality of it, you're in the very infant levels of what the capability is. And like even just to the point where I've seen like my wife's capability and use case just dramatically increase over the last 6 months. She's very happy using ChatGPT on a daily basis. She's doing so much work with it now. And she sits there and she treats it like an assistant, getting to help her generate the contracts, generate information, ask questions. She's doing a lot of that sort of stuff. So the next step, logically, at some point for me, is to introduce agentic solutions and start introducing that to her. I've been cautious, and I've been cautious with clients before with this as well, because you can go down a serious rabbit hole. It can get a little bit expensive with some of the platforms, depending on how you utilize it. Or you can completely stall your output by generating the wrong information. So I think having a context of what you're actually looking for and having the processes to start with, that's the key to having a good agentic solution. But these big frontier models are struggling with this right now because the compute power behind it is huge. And the competition is real, with the Western versus the Chinese models now about what the capabilities are. And a lot of people are going down the path of local LMM systems as well to be able to run this stuff local and try and avoid some of those costs. And there's lots of benefits. We talked about paths with that too.
Oh, absolutely. And we can get into that in a second, but I want to clarify a little bit on my end, right? So the generative AI, I tend to really stick away from. Like we've talked about it in my aspect, where it's not fully autonomous in anything I do, right? My social, my DM, like it's a process. Like for me, it's more of an outcome-based agent where it has a set process that it runs through, and at the end of it, I have to review it before it goes out. That to me is more of an outcome-based agent or solution that saves time, and that I think is the long term, right? Because you have a lot of risk when it comes to the generative, and part of the clip that I was listening to talks about all these E&O insurances and all these business insurance policies are cutting out liability coverage for you due to an AI agent, right? So if and the example it gave was back early day, like early days, a year and a half or 2 years ago, like
back in the 1920s.
Yeah, back in the 20s when we had to walk up to school both ways, but it was one of the airlines. I don't remember what airline it was, but a guy had asked a chatbot about their bereavement policy because his mom had died, and he had asked the chatbot, do you have to request the bereavement rate before you fly, or can it be retroactive? And the chatbot responded, no, our policy is that you can, when you come home, you can apply it up to 90 days after, and the difference will be, refunded to you. And so he flew, to his mom, did the funeral, came back, applied for it, and then they denied it because their actual policy says you have to do it before the flight. Well, long story short, man sued, and they had to pay him the difference of like $800 or something like that, plus the attorney's fees, because of the fact that they said, like, it's your chatbot, right? It's on your site. You are responsible for what it says. You know what I mean?
What this reminds me of? What it reminds me of, Dave, there is when you walk into a store and an item is incorrectly priced on the shelf, and you bring it to the register and you go to pay for it, and they say, oh, I'm sorry, that's actually not that price. It's a higher price. Well, most stores and most government policies force the actual store to sell it to you at the price it's advertised and marked on there. Therefore, you have to honor it. It's no different. If you're going to have if you've got an incompetent staff member who's incorrectly marked it, or if you've got staff who haven't noticed that it's an old marking, an old barcode on there or something like that, it could be for any number of reasons. It could have just changed that morning and no one's gotten to it yet. These tools are exactly the same. It's no difference to if you've got something written in a policy on your website and it's an old version that hasn't been updated, then you're screwed. I mean, that's just how it is.
Well, there are some, and over here, I know on the pricing aspect that you were talking about, there are some limitations on that. So like, you can't, like, if somebody mismarks a TV for $10 and it's $1,000, like the store can refuse to sell that to you. Like, you don't get to just take it out, right? Like, there are some limitations. Again, I'm not an attorney, don't know any of this, but I know there are some sort of limitations, because you could do insider, like one guy prices it and then their friend comes in and buys it. You know what I mean? Like, so there are some but going back to the main point, right? Like you were saying, is, and going back to the insurance, you may think right now that you're covered, if your agent, says something, anything like that. So, a lot of times in your agreements, or we've talked about agreements and things like that, if you are using it in some shape, way, or form, you better make sure that there's something in your agreements now that simply says, hey, this is how we're using it. By agreeing to this, you agree that you understand that there are some risks with AI and that you're okay with us using it. If you want to opt out of it, here's a checkbox to opt out. And we talked about it in the pricing before, like you should have two prices with that option of if you allow us to use AI to make it more efficient or without it, and then they get to choose. But if they opt in, they're also sharing the risk with you, and you could do the however you want with your attorney or how to word it, but you could also share that where they can't sue you specifically on that unless there was something higher arching that resulted in a significant loss of income, things like that. But again, talk to a business attorney. You want to make sure that you're covered, they're covered, and we talked about on agreements. The ultimate goal there is that it's a partnership anyways. You want it to be win-win, not lose-win in your agreements. So just work with both parties to make sure everybody's on the same page.
Yeah, totally. And I think if you look at one other thing there, like you chose not to name the airline involved in this situation, but reputational damage. Like the reputational damage of getting that wrong makes the business look stupid, makes them look like they're incompetent, makes them look like they're using untrained software. And the first question that comes to mind of a consumer is typically, what was the reason you did this? Was it to cut costs? Was it to not have a real person answering the messages? Was this a way to try and filter messages initially? All these things come to mind of a consumer, because I've had situations where I can't talk to a real person.
So James here, this is what I'm saying. Like insurance companies are actually excluding this from your errors and omissions insurance for a couple ways. One, because they don't have any metrics around it. So they don't know actually how to price it, because they literally have no idea. Like they don't know what the risks are. And so on an insurance company, if they can't price the risk, they're just going to exclude it. So a lot of insurance companies are actually, just excluding this. So if you do have an errors and omission, make sure you're checking it, especially if you are utilizing it in some shape, way, or form, to see if you're covered or not. And just like cyber insurance, like cyber just used to be rolled in. And now with the increase of all these like files being locked down and things like that, they've rolled it out into a separate policy. And I'm assuming that's essentially what's going to happen with AI is you're going to have a separate AI agent policy that's going to cover whatever you're doing in your business with that, the number of clients you have, things like that. So that's how I see it kind of moving into the future.
I think you're right.
Got to be careful.
You look into the cybersecurity side of things in Australia, separate policies has been something that's recently introduced. And around that is compliance-related concerns. So that if you're a business, you must hit certain compliance standards to be able to actually get the insurance enabled.
Right.
Some governments, like in Australia, if you are breached from a cybersecurity point of view, you have to report that to the government. It has to be reported to your customers, and it has to be an incident report explaining exactly what level of breach and what was breached, which is huge reputational damage. And the same thing goes with these chatbots. So many people I know have just set up a chatbot, pointed it to the website, go learn this. And like, yeah, all right, we're done. Charge some money to a customer. And then the chatbot just does not work the way it's meant to.
That's why I want to stay away, like the generative AI piece, because there are so many unknowns. Like you can't really control it. In the end, a generative AI is just there to predict what the next word letter is supposed to be. Now it's getting better and things like that, where it can do checks and balances and stuff like that. You think back to early days of ChatGPT and you hear about the attorneys that they were using their legal filings and it just made up court cases, and they didn't check. And which also goes back to what we've talked about time and time again on this podcast. You have to have a system. You have to have a process, which is why in our system, my system that I use on a regular basis, it requires me to review it. I have to look. I have to agree or say, yes, this is the message I want to be sent out to somebody. This is the email copy I want to be sent out. The agentic part comes in of reducing the amount of steps that I have to take manually to get to that point. That's the whole way of moving things forward and making yourself more efficient, making your team more efficient. And there's less liability in that because you train it on specific processes, on specific steps, right? And that's where it's going. And that's where you have the biggest opportunity, which is where that's what we're focusing on right now, is how do we how do we build more of these outcome-based agent models that still could think for itself if it needed to, right? And do some things to go out and research and all that other stuff. But the ultimate goal is, how do you just build outcome agents that are going to go through a process, that are going to take those things off your plate? As I told you, before last month, right? Last week's episode, it just feels like I'm a director again, because I'm able to just ask a question. It does the research for me. And then if it's incorrect, or we need to make an adjustment, I say, hey, go correct this. This is what you need to do. Go take this $5,000 expense from uncategorized, and we need to categorize it as repair and maintenance. It goes out and does it, which is exactly what I would do if I had a senior accountant. I wouldn't be going into the system as a director to make that entry. Financial statements, they would create them for me. I would get them. I would review them, that they're in the same format, that the variance analysis looked right. That's what I'm training the system now to do, is all of that senior accountant level stuff, that I can now be a director, CEO of not only our business, but help our clients. And that's ultimately, I guess I don't want to say like everybody should focus on that, because some people are just into it like you and I are, right? But that's ultimately where hopefully the problem is that we're solving for people, is that time. We talked about it. Brian, who's in my office, who does branding and marketing, we've had a lot of conversations. We're probably actually going to start up another podcast together. But the biggest thing for us is we help you reclaim time. That's the biggest sort of, like, it was like a aha moment when we're talking about that, of, what do we do? And it came up yesterday in the presentation. Somebody asked, like, what's the number one thing that you help people do in their business? Because they're like, with the AI, the automation, the finance. I said, the biggest thing is we help you reclaim your time. Like, we help you get hours back in the day, or do 12 hours of work in 8. And that's ultimately what you need to be doing as a small business owner. You have to be willing to find where you can take those advantages to put yourself above and ahead. We're at a disadvantage when we're starting. These big teams, they have 12 marketing department, right? 12-person marketing departments. They have millions of dollars of budget. So what do we have to do differently? We have to think differently and do more with less. Because as we always say, we have the same amount of time, right? Everybody has the same 24 hours a day. They have the same 24 hours a day that you. But how do you manage that more efficiently? How do you start thinking like a CEO? How do you start thinking like a chief level, so that you're running your business? And it might be a shift for some of you that are watching this. You may have never been at a director level or a chief executive officer level. And you may be wondering, like, how do I do that? Well, think about it. You have to think, how do I delegate? How do I take things off my plate? Not how do I take more? Not how do I have to manage everything? How do I have something else manage it, and I just review it and make sure the process is ready? That's how you start becoming chief and CEO of your business, so that you can take yourself out of your business. Because the ultimate goal is, how does your business run without you? You don't want to have to take a vacation and now your business stops and you make no money. That doesn't help you. You need to be thinking, how do I develop a business that can run without me, even when I'm not around?
Absolutely. And this is where, like I've introduced my second Hermes agent the last couple of weeks, and it was starting to bug me how to communicate with it. So I introduced my first Hermes agent to be in charge of communicating with my second Hermes agent, which sits on another machine. And my plan is simple. It was, I'm going to delegate to the first one and let it delegate out as it feels necessary. And I found myself in a much calmer place by having it do the delegation for me and work in orchestrating what I need done. And I know you and I have spoken. You've got an entire team sitting in your Hermes at the moment of agents doing different things.
An entire organization, but we'll get to that maybe on another episode. But 7 departments and 65 employees.
Yeah. See, like, and that sort of stuff. And like, you can't manage that. If you want an example of that, try building an app without using a proper CLI and just do it in the code base. Do it in the chat level. And you're sitting there going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Whereas when you start introducing some of these processes, you can get so much more out of it so much quicker. And it all comes down to delegation. You basically feel like you're constantly delegating. So if you're delegating too much, then adjust your process. If you find you introduce someone else to become the delegator for you, and it doesn't have to be a person, it could be an AI system. If you got too much communication coming in, you need to sort it, delegate it to an AI agent, and let it try and sort out that and tell you what's important to focus on. There's lots of different methods that you can introduce for it, but it's really interesting where we're heading with this. I'm yet to see, I've heard of factory style AI development houses where they're trying to build stuff end to end, one shot code. It just doesn't work. None of it I've seen has been very successful. It's all been very simple. It's been clones of things. There's not a lot of thought goes into it. In some cases, put a hell of a lot of thought into it, but then that causes the AIs to need a lot more prompting and feedback and questions to help push it to that next level. Right. So, yeah, I think it really comes down to, it's like the conversation I had with my team leader today, was we're trying to use these tools to reduce the stress of our team and get higher yields of output. So if we can get a balance of reducing your stress, utilizing your skill to train an AI to produce better results and do it quicker, then that's hopefully going to reduce your stress, because you're going to be delegating with those tools and you're going to be getting these results and checking them for quality and then pushing back.
No, 100%. And I think, and that's where the feedback from a team, you have a team, right? So it's a little bit different. And I think we were talking a little bit pre-show on that, and ultimately, when you have a team, or maybe you're thinking about bringing somebody on, there's two things that you're going to do with somebody over time. And I've said this before. You're either going to coach them up, right? And they're going to pick up the new process or learn something new and level up themselves and maybe want to move up in the company or make themselves more productive. So you're going to coach them up, or you're going to coach them out. Yeah. And the reason why those are the only two is because you don't want to be complacent with anybody in your business. A couple of weeks ago, we talked about the 80-20 in your revenue and your clients. The same thing applies to your employees. 80-20 rule applies. You're going to get 80% of your productivity from 20% of your employees. So you need to be willing to look through and weed through the bottom half of the other 80%, or bottom third, whatever you want of that. But the idea around that, and I've seen this happen in so many organizations, is that if you are complacent and you let those employees stick around, they ruin the culture for everybody else. The 20% that's giving you the 80% productivity, you're probably like, man, 6 months later, why is Jane not producing anymore? Well, because Jane's getting upset because she's watching, Justin slack off and be promoted or get the same raise as her or same recognition for something small that he does and no repercussions. Yeah. So at the same point, when you have to be cognizant, why can't I say that word? It's a weird morning, but you have to be mindful of the fact that this is happening in your business with people, that it's always going on. You may not see it because, again, when you're in a position of leadership, not even just ownership, but leadership, they try to hide stuff like this from you because they're afraid of what might happen. So you have to be forward thinking as a leader and proactive in being mindful of what the processes are, the reviews, holding everybody to the same standard. And we talked about it beforehand, right? Everybody has their KPIs. Everybody has their metrics. If they're not hitting it, you have to coach them up or coach them out, which in today's society means you have to have a good write-up process. You have to have a good disciplinary process, whether it's a verbal warning, a written warning, a final warning, and then termination. You have to have something in place. Otherwise, especially in today's world, everybody's going to claim because they were fired for some sort of discrimination, whether
Absolutely.
it's age, sex, color, race, sexuality, whatever. So you
replaced by AI. That's the new one.
Right. Now, you can, there's certain circumstances, again, no HR expert here, but consult with somebody. But there's ways, depending on the position or the process of where things are going in your business, like you just said, AI capacity, you could terminate a position title or that position. But there's a certain time period, and again, don't quote me on it because I'm not an HR expert or HR attorney, but there's a certain period of time that you have to wait before you can actually hire again for that position. And you potentially have to invite that person to apply for it as well. Like there's some requirements around that if you are going to go down that route. So that's why I always say coach up, coach out. And when it comes to documentation, document. And
I think on top of that too, you should be aware that your business is growing and changing. The landscape is changing. So you have to be willing to adjust people's roles as well.
Yeah.
So you've got to be willing to have those conversations where you can adjust the roles of people. And so many people are like caught in this gap, I think, in business now where, well, that's not what I hired him for. That's not what I hired her for. That's not really something that's really part of their role. If you go back and look at this, you probably find there's portions of the role that are no longer relevant anymore based on the original job description. So you should definitely be going through at least annually doing a job description upgrade for each person. And one thing we have done recently, and we're in the process of, is just asking people to document what they feel their job is. What do you think your job role is? And it's interesting what happens over time. We've got people being with us for up to 10 years. So you can imagine what they feel their job is versus when they started, right?
Right.
And not all of them are being promoted in the same.
That's a good point. In terms of the job description, like I love that. I think a lot of people don't think that route. But you also have to be be mindful of the employees who are like, well, that's not my job. Like those are your bottom 20% people. I'm going to tell you that right now.
Yeah.
Like they're your bottom 20%. And so what you do, as you just kind of said, right, is you update the job description. And if they refuse to do the new duties of the new job, well, then sorry, we don't need you anymore. This job has evolved. Things are going to evolve so quickly now. You as an owner or manager, whatever leadership role you have, you have to be willing to kind of have these sort of conversations and reviews with people. So,
well, like for us, we've got a development team and a design team, and AI is definitely a big part of their work now.
Thanks, Davis. Appreciate it, brother. You're right. And I think the beauty here, Davis, is we have walked through it. We've both been in leadership roles. We both have companies. And we definitely don't have any scripts. If you've watched any of our shows, we go off the rails all the time. So we appreciate it. Thanks for the feedback, sir. But yeah, sorry, go ahead.
But no, it's true. I mean, we've actually got to the point now where we actually had an employee we just let go recently, and the common feedback was, well, I don't have the skills for that. And they're a developer. I don't have the skills for that. I haven't been trained on how to do that. I don't know how to do that. That's not what I was hired for. And it was like, wow. And I think in one point it was like job title was web developer on the official job title. So we got they came back with no, I'm a WordPress developer. So hold on, can you bring your contract up? Can you tell me where it says that in your contract?
Right.
Oh, web developer. Oh, okay. Let's just jump on and Google what's the definition of a web developer. Do you disagree with any of that? And look, that's an extreme case. I mean, most people want to get better in their role.
In corporate, we actually had that integrated as part of their annual review process, was reviewing their job description, having them sign off on it, so they understood what the expectations were, what the goals of their job this year were, all of that, kind of stuff that we talk about, and it's integrated in that. But what you don't want to forget in this process as well, and is also, what are all the jobs that you need, and develop those job descriptions now, so that you're not scrambling to put those together when you actually need them, and you're already overwhelmed and all that other stuff. So, you may be wearing all the hats, as they say, as a small business owner, but how do you break those into the potential positions, the org structure that you'd like to have in the business that you're desiring to build? If you're looking for just a small business, like, just you, then okay, perfect. But give yourself a job description. How often are you, holding yourself accountable? We've talked about doing self-reviews and assessments with yourself. You can't really do that if you don't have a job description for yourself. So feel free to create one for yourself and go over it.
It's interesting, actually. We've got, because we do a lot of the outsourced staffing, one of the things we do with outsourced staffing is we talk about the unicorn. And we've had this conversation.
Yep.
It's a magical creature that knows how to do everything just like you do, and actually cares enough to do it all for the salary you're willing to pay them. And for a lot of small businesses, there is no unicorn that's going to save them, because the unicorn is out building their own business. They got the drive and the motivation to do it themselves. So what you need to do is you need to settle on breaking it down into a couple of smaller roles, and then filling those smaller roles and building your business with a couple of extra bodies, especially when you're outsourcing staff. Like, I think it was in Australia recently. I just saw the delivery drivers for like DoorDash, Uber Eats, all that sort of stuff, right?
Yeah.
Just got increased to $31 an hour. Now, $31 an hour for a delivery driver delivering your food. Now you know why your food costs so much when it arrives at your house, because this is how much they're paying per hour for a delivery driver in Australia.
So they're actually paying them per hour? Like, here it's all just like straight commission. Like, you don't even get an hour there.
100%. And that's the way that was originally meant to. Unions got involved, and this is what happened. It got ruled in the local governments that this is what they wanted, and they got it. Completely, I think it's ridiculous, but I don't have to deal with it. It's not the case for me here. I'm in the Philippines, and they work very differently here. It's all commission based,
right?
But same as the US there. But when you start comparing, like, a delivery rider can earn $31 an hour, and my brother was telling me the other day, he's got people doing furniture removaling, and he's paying them about $32 to $33 an hour to do something like that as well. That's the sort of minimum wages in Australia right now, when we can get a graphic designer for about $10 to $15 an hour at the really high end cost for an outsourced staff member.
And you don't have to have tax filings, you don't have to have payroll, you don't have to do any of this other stuff.
Absolutely.
And again, we've talked about this. You have to understand as well, especially for those in the US, because I had to learn it. When I thought of a VA in the Philippines, and it's like $4 or $5 an hour for 40 hours a week, and I heard that, and I'm like, oh man, I feel like I feel like I'm underpaying, right? Like, why would I, like,
taking advantage, slavery,
taking advantage, and but then talking to you and realizing, I think it was, we were on a call, and you're like, hey, I just got an order from McDonald's, right, from DoorDash.
Yeah, I remember
for me and my son. And I said, and you're like, I had a Happy Meal, chicken nuggets, Big Mac meal, and I think you got a fish and something like that. And I said, man, that must cost you like $40. And you're like, no, it was like 10. And I was like, oh shit, like, okay.
Yeah, I love economy.
And now, and then, so I was like, wait a minute. And that's when I brought up the question. I was like, so really, like $4 or $5 an hour American in the Philippines is like middle class, right? That's like making $80,000, $90,000, $100,000 here, right?
Yep, it is. And because you compare it to the cost of living. And the other thing is, like, you break it down to, not everyone drives a car here, unlike the US, right? A lot of people ride a motorcycle or use public transport. Public transport might cost, $1.50 a day to travel to and from work.
Yeah.
It's kind of like getting a bus in the US, I guess, if you got a bus card and it's got a discount and it's subsidized. You've got food, which they can get, food from the cantinas on the, near work and side of the road, which is like street food. And a lot of them quite happy with that. And they can get that sort of thing for, a couple of dollars for a meal. So
like an hour, if that, you know what I mean?
Exactly. And when you break it down, it's not so bad. And if I look at how much I spend on gas to draw and insurance, my vehicle repayment costs, travel to the office, which would take me at least an hour when I was traveling in the city in Australia, each way, I was probably spending a lot more than $10 a day to travel to work. My first hour and a half was probably covering the cost, 2 hours covering the cost of travel to work, travel home from work, and get a meal. If I added a coffee, spending another $6 to $8 on a coffee. Right. So it's a very different economy of scale.
I get it. Yeah, and the ultimate is some people don't want to outsource to the Philippines, and I get it, or or any other country that offers like VA services. I get it. Like, to each their own. I think ultimately what it comes down to as well is you just have to do that cost benefit analysis. Like, keeping it in the United States, you're going to pay more, but it still may be cheaper to outsource somebody on an outcome basis than having a full-time employee in your business where you have to pay taxes, social, workers' comp, all this stuff, so do the cost benefit analysis for your situation, and what works for you is not going to work for John or you or I, right? Everybody's situation is
absolutely. I got on a call with a client the other day, and their scenario was they've got an employee who does a really good job on socials, their social media, video, work, etc. Doing a great job. Posts are going up. Customers love it. Problem is the rate that they're paying for that person. There's other work they would rather them be doing than that. And they're like, well, if we could outsource it for even half of what it's costing us right now, to somebody who can do 80% of the quality, we'd be happy with that.
Right.
And we'd rather that person work on these other projects instead, because that gets more business in the door for us on another side of the business. And that's a role that they don't want to outsource, but they're willing to outsource this part of the role. And I think if you think as a business owner yourself, what parts are you willing to outsource that you don't have to do? What are the things you don't want to do? Are you not enjoying doing that are back end, behind the scenes office work where no one's going to see it anyway?
Right. And
even if your outsourced staff are only doing 60, 70% of the output of what you can do, they're a fraction of the cost to do it. And your time is better spent doing something else, especially as a small business owner. We've had a lot of cases. We used to have one situation. We do a lot of technical support staff back to Australia to IT providers. And I remember one guy, he came in, he's like, just can't grow my business. Just cannot grow it. Right? And he's explaining what's happening. And I asked him one question. I said, how many hours are you spending picking up a phone call and spending on the phone talking to people who call your phone, your customers? Oh, so much. Okay. How many of them hours that you're talking about are billable? And he realized really quickly, probably less than a quarter of them were, because he had rapporting with these individuals that he'd worked with for years. They just wanted to chat and have a conversation, and he felt like he couldn't charge them for that work. So we suggested, well, why don't you put in a phone system that answers for you, then directs them to the accounts team or the support team. If it goes to the support team, our team will pick it up and they'll give them the support. You'll have a full-time dedicated person doing it. And on the other side, if it goes to accounts, it'll go through and someone will take a message from our reception team and send you a ticket so you know to call them back. And he goes, well, let's try it. 6 months later, he hired another person in Australia to work with him and was able to do that because he freed up so much time. He was able to get more clients and do more work. He didn't realize just that one thing of having someone in the back end answering his phones was going to make such a big difference. He didn't realize that someone just taking information from a customer, putting it into his ticketing system so he didn't have to, was going to make a difference. He didn't realize that he missed out on entering that information himself for a lot of the jobs, so he never got paid for them. He realized that he was on the road, he was traveling, he was doing it in between other tasks. He didn't allocate properly. He was like, oh, it takes 5 minutes, I won't charge. Turned out it actually take 15 to 20 minutes. And he was billing in 15-minute increments. So that was, 15 to 30 minutes that he wasn't billing for an hour. And he just found massive savings and was able to grow his business because of that. So when you start thinking about these things, just as something as simple as what is it that I'm doing in a day that takes up a lot of my time that I don't have to do, or I'd rather not be doing, that could be the one thing you outsource, whether it's to an individual, whether it's to an agency, whether it's to AI. There's ways to outsource that now, which can actually help you and get you in a more profitable position or a more time, positive position to spend doing things you want to do and growing your business.
Well, and I think it brings up the point that no matter what size of business you are, there are inefficiencies. I have inefficiencies. I'm sure Duarne, you have inefficiencies. There's always room for improvement. Again, remember, the 80-20 rule doesn't just stop because you figured out the 20% that's giving you 80% of the profit, or your clients or your employees or your work, right? Your output is coming from 20% of your time. So realize what is 20% of your time that's giving you 80% of the revenue. And that's where you need to spend your time to get more revenue. And then you take the other 80% and figure out maybe the bottom half of that. So the bottom 40% of your time, get rid of it, outsource it. Your time is more valuable. We've already, just by the 80-20 rule in effect, justifies that your time is more valuable not doing that work. Because when you're not doing the work, 20%, you're making 80% of your net profit or your revenue, however you want to look at it. So we already can justify that 40%, the bottom 40% for now, is not profitable for you. So cut it out, outsource it, or find some way. And if you don't have funding, which I understand, some people, you're not in a position right now. You're just getting started. Maybe you don't have a lot of revenue. Then learn. You have to then be willing to learn how to build something or run a process to take that 40% off of your time. You don't just use it as an excuse, to say, oh, I can't do it because I don't have the funding right now to outsource that, so I'm just going to be stuck where I'm at. No, you have to be willing to do something differently. Maybe it's an extra, you have to spend an extra 10 hours a week, doing work, something that's outside your comfort zone. You have to be willing to do that.
Well, it's interesting. I was watching people work with a free version of ChatGPT, and they're telling me this is enough for me. For what I do, this is perfectly okay. And when I asked them if they could do something like drop an image and tell it to manipulate this and do this, oh, it doesn't let me do that. Oh, it's got a limit. I can only do that twice every day or something like this. Or I have to wait 3 hours for my second image if it messes it up. It's like, oh, okay. Why don't you spend $20 a month and remove that barrier?
Right.
Oh, it'll give me more? Yeah. $20 down, and suddenly they can output a lot more work. $20, you can get that back really quickly. And this is where I think even if you're not ready to do anything with an outsourced staff member or an AI agent, most businesses can afford $20 a month for an AI subscription, whether it's a Claude or a ChatGPT or Grok or whatever. There's plenty of opportunity there to be able to use that tool to get back an hour a day, an hour, 5 hours a week, maybe even a lot more. I was really biting my tongue going, I'm not going to spend $200 on a subscription with ChatGPT. That's just crazy. That's all. I can do the $20 plan. Then I hit a limit. Mm-hmm. And I'll wait. I'll do something else. And then it happens again. All right, I'll do the $100 plan. And then I've hit my limit. So I'm like, you know what, bugger it. I'm going to spend $200 because at the end of the day, my time is worth more than that. Mm-hmm. That all I got to do is save 1 hour in a month and
Right.
I've covered the cost of that increase.
I have never regretted the $200 a month subscriptions for the amount of stuff that we're doing with them.
No.
And one, like I said, we were on 2 Claude, and then now it's 1 Claude, 1 Codex, or OpenAI, however you want to talk about it.
Yeah.
But yeah, your time is just way more valuable because of what you're able to potentially do, and you just figure that out, and you just work through it. And again, we say this all the time: what we tell you is not something you can't go do for yourself.
No.
What we provide is not something that you can't go provide for yourself. But we're saving time, energy, anxiety, and stress because we've gone through it. Like, I've literally been head down, most of the time, besides other client work, in co-work, right, in Claude, since it came out. And the craziest thing is, it's only been out since April-ish, like the end of March, April. Like, we're not talking, years here. So when people are like, I feel behind, or I haven't gotten started, I don't know where to start. Well, great. Just get started.
You're not too
You're walking. Late. Just, it's that first step, just like a baby. Like, just think, they stand up. It's not too soon out, not too long after, right, that they take the first step, then the second. And then all of a sudden, you can't stop them. I'm hoping that happens soon so I can lose some weight. With our daughter, like, get up and run already so I can run after you and lose some weight. Myself,
yeah, you say that now. Famous last words.
Yeah, that's true. Come back to me in a couple months. I'll let you know if I still feel that way.
I got 2 like that I'm chasing right now.
Yeah, but that's where you're at. You're not crawling yet. When it comes to your AI and your business, things like that. Like, yeah, you may have asked ChatGPT a question, or you may have it generate all these fun social media images for you. That's the tippity tip of the iceberg of what you can do.
Oh, yeah.
Like, there's so much more, and ultimately I've had a lot of these conversations as well. People are like, I know I want to do more with it. I just don't know how, and I don't want to take the time because I love what I'm doing in my business. That's where perfect. Now you just help with the direction, and that's what you can do. There's 1 or 2 phases. Well, 3. People are that I'm completely against it. I will never adopt it. Those are the people that will be obsolete soon, or they'll change their mind. One or two ways, 1 or 2 outcomes for them. The second one are the people that are like, I'm in, and they're going to learn it like you and I. Like, we're going to dive in head first. We're going to see how we can make an impact to our businesses, and then counteract that and duplicate it for others. And then there's also the people that are like, I know I need to do it. I don't want to take the time to learn it. I don't want to be head down. I don't want to know how to train a Hermes agent or build a skill or all this other stuff. They want to just, what's the process that's going to help me get? And that's what I wanted to help. I wanted to help me solve. How do you do that?
It's like, and it's no different taking the expertise of somebody who knows how to do something already, and get them to mentor or train you or coach you or build something for you. Right. Implementation partners have been used in the past for pretty much every other aspect of your business. So what's the difference? Get a good implementation partner who's willing to train you on how to and get your system set up for you. It just blows my mind. I love watching people and how they use the tools, like the AI chat platforms. Something as simple as the way they prompt. I watched my wife probably about a month ago doing a few things over her shoulder. I said, hey, hon, just try saying this instead. So she did. And she's like, oh, wow, that's what I wanted. Cool. Went back to work. A couple of days later, something else she was doing. And I'm like, hon, let me show you something. See that? Just drop and drag that over there and then give it this instruction. Oh, wow, that was quick. Can I make it do this? Yeah, just tell it. Oh, wow. Okay. That's what I wanted. Saved it. Hours worth of work in a couple of prompts. It's those sort of reactions that you're going to find are the most rewarding for yourself, because you'll sit there and you'll go, oh, there's no way I could have done as much work. Take, for example, rostering. Rostering is probably the worst thing ever in business if you've got multiple staff, right? Making sure you got things covered and rostered properly. And the amount of times that people, I mean, myself included, would come in and my roster would be messed up. And I'll be like, oh, hang on, someone's messed up this isn't right. Well, you can do that sort of stuff with, sanity check that stuff with ChatGPT. you can tell it what your outcome is and say, hey, I need to give Bob 15 hours this week. I need to give 24 hours to Mary over here, and I need complete coverage with the rest of the full-time team. And we've got a late close on Thursday. Let's make sure we've got someone covering that with, can you help me put this together? And it'll go and put some suggestions together. And then that can save you hours and hours and hours of brain strain trying to put that together. And I know there's a lot of people out there saying, oh, doesn't it make you dumb though? Well, no, because not if you're the one who already has the genuine idea and you're giving an instruction to do it for you. It's no different to picking up a calculator and doing the calculation on a calculator versus doing it on paper.
Yeah, but or are you getting dumber because you brought in a staff member and trained them to do the job that you were doing? Like, you don't get dumber. Exactly. You get an opportunity to get smarter. Like, I think that's the beauty of it. And the idea with those things too is like now you're creating like repeatable processes and scheduled cron jobs, right? Cron jobs are obviously the agent's way of scheduling at a certain time, certain frequency. But those are the things that it's like, all right, every morning at 9 a.m., I want you to do X, Y, and Z, right? And it happens on the computer separately, to build out. And it's that much easier to do, and again, it's just things of how do I take time off of my plate, right? How do I bring things to the table that requires less of the manual research time and then get to the output right away. And when you mentioned like the prompting, things like that, the interesting piece of that is, once there's something like a template or a document or a version that you'd like to continue, you then build that into the context, and your route and your instructions in the background, where every time I come into the system and I ask you to create social imagery, these are your guidelines. Like, you're going to rotate between maybe these 4 options. Like in our social engine, we have 10 different image types that could be used on any sort of social media copy that we put out there. And we're constantly evolving that or improving it because I see a version of something I like, and I give it to the engine and say, hey, I want to start incorporating this into us. How do we do that? Build it out, and then let's review it. Carousels, there's like 4 different versions of carousels that it can choose from when it's creating a carousel. So the idea is that's in the guideline file. So when it's pulling in, it knows based on the instructions, and then you don't have to continue to prompt it so in depth because it's already there for it. And there's yesterday, and another interesting video. It was the guy from Anthropic that talks about your skills, and if you're not reviewing your skills on a regular basis, they may be actually harming you than actually helping you, because every time they release a new model, they're changing the system prompt on the back end, and they're incorporating more things, or they're eliminating things that don't need to be there anymore. And your initial skill creation was written on the previous model. So like for Fable or Opus, a skill that worked on Opus 4 may be dumbed down in Opus 5. And you may be wondering, you may be experienced, why are my skills just not giving me the results they used to? That's why. They actually say to either one or two ways. One, just delete all your skills and then recreate them, with the new process. And you may actually be like surprised by just asking it to do the task, and it can figure it out without a skill, or have it do a review of the skill and analyze itself and update it based on the new version, right? So that way, again, self-improving, always improving. Now, I haven't gone through and done all this yet because, again, we don't do as much on the skill side in co-work as much as we do now in Claude Code and everything. But still, it's always worth a review to say, hey, based on your current setup, review the skills and the documents and run through and let me know what we need to change, what should we improve. Test yourself, do a test before and after the update. And here's the metrics for this skill. Here's what it should output, the speed, the repetition, the token use, and then analyze it before and after. And then say, did that make a correct change or not? So,
well, it comes down to, if you're running like an agent system like Hermes, for example, you can have a governance agent whose role is specifically to go through and check everybody's skill set on a regular basis and make suggestions of improvement. check for enhancements and check for, against launch information, etc. I was on a call with a vendor recently, and they were saying to me, I said, how do I keep up with all of your updates? And he's like, well, we put them on our change request page on the website. You can just monitor this. I said, you know what? I could just get my AI agent to monitor that and then just alert me if there's something it thinks I'm interested in knowing.
Right.
Cool. I'll do that. And he just looked at me, shook his head. He goes, that is definitely an option.
Yeah.
And I said, because you know what? I'm not going to go and remember to check that website all the time. Whereas I can get an agent to do it. In most people's industry, if you've got competitors, you can teach an agent to go and check, like you're saying, on a schedule or the cron job, to go and check regularly every 9 a.m. on every, go and check what my competitors are doing on their socials today. Mm-hmm. Tell me if there's any promos or anything I should be aware of. Go
just
check
like you would have a marketing team, and their responsibility would be to keep on top of that. If you're small business, how are you going to do that? Like you're like, I'll end it with this, because this is something I want you to take away, and you need to do this if you have not done this and you haven't listened to me previously on this, you got to do it now. You have to create yourself you have to do the 2 lists. You have to create yourself the 2 lists. The first list is everything you're doing right now. What's manual, right? What is taking up a lot of your time? What's that 80% of your time that is taking it up that's not leading to the revenue generation, okay? That you could automate, maybe use AI with, whatever it is. Write that list out, everything. Take the time this weekend, do it. The second list is everything that either you should be doing because, well, you're a business owner and you should be doing more X, Y, and Z. Sales, probably number 1 for a lot of people. Or like things that you want to be doing with your time. Like for some people that get into business, it's I want to spend more time with the family. I want to have weekends away. I want to take weekend trips. I want to take vacation, whatever it is. Write it down on number 2. And those 2 lists are going to direct you into your entire roadmap of what you can be doing in your business. Either if you're bootstrapping and you don't have investments to outsource some of this stuff, you now know what you need to go to start developing processes for yourself and your business. What can take some of this stuff away? What makes it easier? And so with that, that's what I'm going to leave you with is do those 2 lists, create those 2 lists for you and your business this weekend. And next week, just pick 1 or 2 things. Again, you don't have to implement everything. Like you don't have to be me and Duarne, right? You're not going 0 to 100 overnight. The idea is pick 1 or 2 things that are going to give you back an hour or 2 a week. We've talked about it. An hour or 2 a week is anywhere from 52 to 104 hours a year, right? So that's a little under, it's 2.5 weeks. What could you do in 2.5 weeks more of your time, right? That's just 2 hours.
That's a vacation.
That's a vacation. That's extra sales work. That's growth. That's where in every single business, I tell people this, every single business, I can find you the time to grow. You just have to be willing to be open-minded about it and take the action that's needed to do it. I can find time. I can guarantee, like you're traveling too much. You're driving between locations too much. You're sitting at home. You're calling the end of the day too early in the day. You think you have so much flexibility and you don't. Like if you're not happy with where you're at in your business, I shouldn't see you sitting on a couch or you telling me how good the game was. Or a show that you just started watching. You don't have that. That's not your benefit. Like you're not doing everything you want to do. And if that and to each their own. Like if you want to try and grow a business, cut off every day at 4, great. But then don't complain because you're not doing all the work. Like
you're creating a lifestyle for yourself rather than a business.
Exactly. And I won't complain because I always feel like I could be doing more. So I'm never going to complain about where I'm at. And I'm gracious for everything, appreciative of everything that I have right now and that I've been able to accomplish. But I know there's a lot more that we can do, which is why I'm never going to complain. And I'm always going to try ways to improve output, right? And that's what you kind of should be focusing on as a business owner. But Duarne, for you, like what's the big takeaway, brother?
For me, I think definitely look into what you're doing on a daily basis and work out if you could automate something, what would it be? One thing. If you could use AI to help you with one task, what would that be? And if you could outsource one thing, what would that be? And then work out what's the biggest saving by doing it. And maybe what sort of saving could you get by doing all three?
Right.
And once you do it once, in any one of those, it's a very easy pattern to repeat.
100%. And I'll follow up on that as an example. After the presentation yesterday, there was a gentleman who I had actually met in our office the day before. He's a musician, and he was at the AI presentation, but he also writes articles for a magazine. And he was talking to me afterwards about, love what you do. I wish I was younger. I would probably be more into it. I don't know how it could help me. And I said, well, what do you do? He's like, well, I write articles as well. I go out, I interview families or people, and then I take it and I write up a big article or in some magazine. I don't remember the magazine, but it was a magazine. And he's like, I love writing, so I don't want to get rid of that. And then, but I was listening to him. He's like, but I like to research the job titles, research the companies. I like a particular format. And I want to just make sure it's impactful. I said, so have you thought about having just AI at the beginning of the process after the interview, take your notes, and before it gives it back to you, does all the research on the company they worked for, the job title they had, their experience, all this stuff that you're manually doing research on now that's taking up some of your time, and it's already in a research document for you, then you can take it and write it however you want. And he was like, oh, wow. Yeah. Okay. And so it's that moment that you're like, I may love writing content. I may love writing articles, but there's still part of the process that you're doing manually that AI process and assistance can save you time. And that's what it's about. Again, we said, reclaim your time. So what are the things that are taking up your time? You don't have to give up the stuff that you love. That's not what we're saying. We actually want you to spend more time doing what you love, because that's the 20% that's probably making you 80% of your revenue. So spend more time doing that. And the only time you can do that is, again, because we have the same 24 hours in a day, is to take out all the stuff that's taking you away from that. And that's the biggest piece that I want you to take away from today's episode, is that exact piece right there. So over the weekend, go through your to list. Again, list number 1, think of all the stuff that you're doing that is taking up your time right now, manual, that you wish would be automated, or that it's part of your 80%. Write it down. That's list number 1. List number 2 are then all those things that you wish you could be doing, or know you should be doing more of, or just getting started with it all, that you haven't been able to do because everything on list number 1. Those are the 2 things I want you to create. Those are the 2 things that I want you to go and write for yourself this weekend. So Duarne, as always, brother, great episode. Love having a conversation with you. Look forward to talking with you all next week. Again, we're here every single Friday morning around 8:30 Eastern for the Business Unscripted episodes. And we're here to help you with your business, learn from our experiences, give you these types of strategies, tasks, sometimes homework assignments like we are here. But the ultimate goal is to help you kind of level up, grow in your business. So if you ever have any questions, feel free, drop them down below, email us as well. And we'll get you answers to those questions. But until then, Duarne, thank you, my friend. And we'll see you in the next one. Have a good one.
Thanks, Dave. See you, everyone.
Bye.